Welcome to the SBCA podcast, Component Connection, where we explore the people, ideas, trends, and innovations shaping the structural framing industry. Regardless of how you touch this industry, we're glad you're here. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, my name is Abby Langenberg, the Director of Business Development for SBCA, and I will be your host for this episode. I'm joined today by Jess Lohse, Executive Director of SBCA, to talk about our component warning notice and why it matters. So welcome to the podcast, Jess.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Abby.
So for those who may not be familiar, what exactly is the component warning notice?
So essentially, it's a series of tools that allow component manufacturers to communicate certain risks that are inherent with handling their products. So, when it comes right down to it, there's the three things, which is a tag that we encourage everybody to attach to their structural building component or their roof truss, their floor truss. That will include a QR code. That QR code will take them to a website, componentwarningnotice.com, which has the totality of the information, both in English and in Spanish for those that are either bilingual or only speak one or the other, but it allows for, being able to catch a few more eyes that way. And then we also have a paper companion that can be included in a job site package. It comes standard in our traditional job site packages through SBCA, or if you're building your own, you can order those sheets as a one-off. So really, it's a series of tools to help educate and communicate risks associated with components.
So why was the CWN component warning notice created, and what role does it play in our industry?
It was created as kind of a realization that we don't have product level, like each individual specific component communications as to what can happen if those things, those items, those manufactured products are misused or not used as intended. So really, it was one of those, like, how do we get this communicated? And, we looked at a number of different ways and different means, and how do we communicate exactly what we want to draw awareness? And that's the biggest thing, is draw awareness that if not respected, this thing can come back and, the proverbial bite you type situation. So really, we're trying to educate everyone that comes in contact with the component throughout the process, of their risks, and to research those risks and to change their behavior, make sure that they act a little bit more responsible, a little bit more safety conscious when handling these products, and likelihood that they're going to return home that day the way they came without incident.
So can you give us a sense of the history of the CWN? How long has it been around, and how has it evolved kind of since its first ideation?
Yeah, so it's really, as far as products that SBCA offers or the goods and services, it's relatively new. It was in development for a year. So think back 2 years from BCMC. It was probably that fall, winter of 2023 that we started talking about it as a leadership group through our corporate council or association council, and really trying to understand, what does BCSI do? What does it not do? What our job site packages are a derivative of BCSI. And then where do we have some, lacking communications, and how do we best do that? So it took about a year's worth of development and going back and forth and talking about the idea at a number of OQMs, really discussing it with component manufacturers, various leaders, and just trying to understand what is possible, what do we want to communicate, what do we need to communicate, and then how do we go from there. We released it at BCMC about that time period last year in 2024, really a full push, but it had been in the works for a little while before that. And, we've had some feedback. We changed some of the wording and some of the verbiage on the website, the componentwarningnotice.com, as well as a little bit on the tag. Had some feedback from some framers and really wanted to weave in that information. And of course, everybody thinks it's one of those, I've done this 1,000,001 times and I know all and I don't need this, but it's one of those that 1,000,002 might be the one that catches you. And we want to make sure that you are thinking as thoroughly through the process and respect it as much on that 1,000,002 as you did on number 1, 2, and 3. So that's the history and where it came from, but it is relatively new yet to the industry, and we are trying to get the word out, hence the podcast.
So why is it important that every builder, framer, or job site crew sees and understands this notice?
Well, anybody that can see it is potentially at risk of, misuse or mishandling or, some sort of a gravity event, some sort of risk that could potentially harm them. And, that's where we really went and studied and understood, okay, how are job site packages being utilized? Who sees them? Is it just the one person on the job site? Is it every person? And that comes with a varying degree. Not every single person is going to do that. And how do we communicate with, more totality of anybody that comes in contact with that manufactured product? And that's what really, hopefully, the warning, which is a special color of orange, as well as the yellow triangles and indicating, some gravity events happening there. That visual representation will hopefully give people pause to understand, okay, I am not sitting in a cloud of marshmallows here. I'm doing real stuff. This is real life. There's no take backsies. There's no undo button. This is really going to potentially hurt me if I'm not respectful of it and doing it the proper way. So it's one of those that everybody that has a pair of eyes that's working on that job site, they need to be a consumer of that content, not just certain people, not just people in the office, not just the lead person that is handling the layout or whatever on the project, but anybody that touches that component or comes in even near it needs to understand that, hey, this is one, there's some risk. I need to understand that and give them the tools to understand those risks better. And that's hence the QR code, the call to action, and making sure that they are better prepared whenever they are around components, in a state that potentially could harm them.
So what are some of the common misconceptions people might have about trusses or other components that the CWN helps address?
It'd probably take me hours to, fully answer that. But I think a common one is that it's just another piece of wood, that the 2x8 that you go to your local Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards or Home Center or Lumberyard and purchase is the same exact thing as a truss that is 30, 40, 50 feet long at a 4, 5, 6, 12 pitch, might be vaulted. That it's the same thing. Just because it's made of that part of it, you have to treat it differently. So that's probably one misconception. And it's easy to, visually, it looks very much the same, but it's not. It's a engineered manufactured product. Just because it utilizes wood doesn't mean it is wood. Similarly, that it is the same no matter what orientation you put it in. If it's laying down, if it's upside down, if it's right side up, if it's properly, vertically installed, or that you can jump or, run or do whatever you want to this product. There's so many things that you need to respect it. You need to understand what it is and not have that misconception that you can use it as a scaffold. You can use it for this. You can step on this part of the truss and you can't step on that. To really understand that it is very unique and that it is made of wood and there's some variability there. And that's why our industry relies so heavily on, the published design values for those buckets of wood, but not every piece is the exact same. And you have to take that into account. You need to look at it and you need to treat it each step as its own and, make sure that you are understanding what it is that you're doing and that you've properly assessed the situation to understand the risk. And to know that, it is one of those, we want to make sure you're doing it properly and give you the resources, and the component warning notice is a great way to do that on each and every truss.
So how does the CWN help protect component manufacturers legally or practically when they are using it in conjunction with the job site package?
Well, I don't know necessarily if it does that. I think, kind of to challenge that premise as far as it's about doing the right thing and it's communicating inherent risks. And while there might be some benefits there, it's about, making sure that we are communicating that, yes, there are risks here. This is something that, it's an important product. It's manufactured. And it's one of those that do the right thing. Like Larry Dix, I think that's the motto of his company, our incoming president for SBCA. And this is part of doing that. It's communication. And it's one of those that, yes, there are costs involved, just like you have insurance policies, and this is one that helps you communicate that. And, hopefully you never need to know whether or not it worked or it didn't, but it is one of those that legally, I'm not sure where it is. It's not that we were looking at it with that eye. We were looking at it like, how do we protect people? The folks that are installing these, components, these manufactured products that are our members are predominantly the ones that they provide. We want to make sure that each and every person that touches a component is as safe when they go home as when they got that data to work with them. And that's really the root of it, and making sure that we are able to, provide that factor and that communication. If you don't respect it, there is some potential harm there. And that's where you read the documentation, you go through it. And that's really what we were looking for there.
So what is the potential risk if that component warning notice is ignored, overlooked, not included in the job? What does that look like in terms of, the safety risk?
Yeah, so there might not be any, but there might be some. And that's one where if you don't fully understand it, and I get it, construction industry is full of cowboys, everybody's done it, that 10 million and one times, or I forget what number I'm up to now, but they think they know everything and they've been through everything, but they typically don't assess and account for every single variable on every single job site on every single day. And you don't know what that combination of variables is going to be to where there's an incident or a situation or something that could potentially harm people. And that's where doing it the right way and starting from the very beginning and understanding hey, I got to have my A game. I got to understand this is a product that, is great and it provides exactly what we need it to from the construction perspective. But if I'm not responsible with it, it could, it could provide harm. And similarly, just like operating a saw or a nail gun or any of those other things. And I see way too many Facebook posts of those events gone wrong. And that's where we want to try to avoid that. And this is our way, our industry's way, and our responsibility really to communicate that, to make sure that, take that extra second, think through what you're going to do with this product, make sure that it's installed properly, that you're handling it the way it should. And you're not going to try to take shortcuts, that there are risks involved with that. And that's, hopefully adds that layer of responsibility. It's a reminder that, hey, let's do this the right way. As we learned, as we're taught, and as it's, industry best practice, as opposed to, in my own life, in my own world, I'm more, likely to go grab the safety goggles or safety glasses before I do something now than I was when I was younger. And I don't know if that's just maturity or having more to lose or, being in this industry a little bit on a different side. But it's one of those, any little reminder in the accumulation of those reminders, I hope will change the behavior and will improve the practices to where we don't ever have to have, the conversation about, so-and-so did this and now they're, in this situation, which is, nobody wants that. We want our products to be utilized as best they can and, continue to be really part of the best way to frame. And, trusses are an amazing product. We just need to be able to respect them.
So why did we decide to include the component warning notice in every attendee bag at BCMC this year?
I think it's to give everybody an example, to show them, what is possible and might not be as adverse to including it in their product. And that's where the component manufacturers love the repetition. They want to just build and build, like stamp, repeat, and keep going on. So anything that we do to change that process or we add a requirement, it's not a requirement, but it's a best practice. It's recommended, to change that. It's a change in the process, which, they love the same thing over and over again, which personality test wise is just awesome, and that's why we look at how we change any minutia of BCMC or our OQMs, because people are very creatures of habit, especially in this industry. But also the incremental cost. It's gonna be a couple cents, and it's one of those, oh gosh, it's not much, but at the same time, you look at how many hundreds of thousands or millions of trusses or hundreds of trusses that you produce, and that's going to add up. And we were sensitive to that, and that was one that I wrestled with. People often ask me what keeps me up at night, and a year and a half ago, when we were going through this, that was one of them. Like, I don't want to change the component manufacturer's behavior if we don't have to. I don't want to add an incremental cost. But this is one, no less that you would try to, not put a plate on a truss to try to save a couple cents. I don't think you not put a component warning notice tag on your truss to try to save a couple cents. I think it's one of those that the communication, the ability, the importance of safety for the downstream users of the product, it's a responsibility as a manufacturer. And I think that's probably the other part of it is component manufacturers don't understand their importance in the construction system. They downplay their significance and the significance of their products. I think it's time that this is a sophistication of our industry and a reminder that we are manufactured goods, just like windows, siding, doors, anything else that lands on that job site, and there's risks involved with it. And as a manufacturer of those products, you have a responsibility to communicate to the installers just what needs to happen and how to be a little bit safer about it, and to be mindful that, we're trying to help them be better at what they do and to be safer as well.
Well, thank you, Jess, for sharing your insights today. And thank you all for listening to SBCA's Component Connection podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please like and share it with your colleagues, and subscribe to Component Connection wherever you get your podcast to stay up to date on future episodes. And we'll see you at BCMC or next time on the podcast.
Thanks for listening to Component Connection, brought to you by SBCA. If there's a topic you'd like us to explore in a future episode, email us at podcast@sbcacomponents.com.